Hello and welcome to CDA Oasis. Continuing our conversation about women in dentistry, I welcome today Dr. Effie Habsha, prosthodontist with Prosthodontics Associates in Toronto. Dr. Habsha is also an adjunct assistant professor at the University of Rochester, a former assistant professor in the Faculty of Dentistry at U of T, and is currently teaching in the Graduate Department of Prosthodontics and staff prosthodontist at Mount Sinai Hospital. At a young age and with a successful career, Dr. Habsha has earned numerous fellowships in the Royal College of Dentists of Canada, the Academy of Prosthodontics, the Pierre Fauchard Academy, and the Academy of Dentistry International. She is currently section head for the oral examination in prosthodontics with the Royal College of Dentists of Canada. It is with much pleasure that I welcome Dr. Habsha to this Oasis conversation.
Thank you, Shiraz. Always good to be here.
All right, so a distinguished career. Can you please share with our viewers what made you decide to become a dentist and continue to specialize in prosthodontics? I have a hunch there are very few women prosthodontists still.
I get asked that question often. I guess I've always wanted to be in the health sciences and decided that dentistry was a good fit for me because of, the art and the science of dentistry. And so I just, I at a very early stage in my career in dental school, I fell in love with prosthodontics. I basically worked as a summer student for my mentor, Dr. George Zarb. And basically, I just saw another side of, the profession that I really enjoyed. It really spoke to me. And then I decided to pursue that in graduate studies, and I haven't looked back since. So it's been a really wonderful journey for me.
You mentioned Dr. Zarb. Were there any mentors or other mentors, and what was their role, and was it important?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, there really weren't any other female prosthodontists, I think, practicing in Toronto. So I think I was the first one that graduated and practiced in Toronto. And so we didn't have really female role models, if you will, in terms of prosthodontists. So really, George Zarb was my mentor. He really felt, he's about the same age as my dad. And, I come from three girls, so gender bias was never an issue in my house. Three girls. George Zarb has daughters as well. So there was never any inequality between male and female. And, I was just an eager student, and he kind of was my mentor, and the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned, regardless of gender.
I completely agree.
Lived, my life.
I completely agree with that. What would you say are the high points and some of the challenges that you encountered during this journey?
I think that the high points obviously is for me working in a profession day in, day out, doing what I love to do. I think that speaks volumes, because I think that you really have to be passionate about what you do. I had some other opportunities in dental school to look at other specialties, but really prosthodontics spoke to me. So really a highlight for me is being able to always improve what I do, to be able to provide the care that I love to provide for my patients, working with amazing people, be it patients, staff, my colleagues, and a big part of what I enjoy doing is teaching as well. So being at the university, lecturing outside of the university, lecturing and connecting with dentists kind of all over Canada, all over the world, has really been exceptional for me. So that's really a highlight of what I do. I like to keep it interesting. I like to lecture. I like to teach. I like to work. I like to, do Oasis discussions. So, whatever keeps it interesting for me, that's what keeps me going. And that passion is kind of, it's contagious, because I think that, the staff and the people around me, I think we're all really excited about what you do, and just surrounding myself with really great people. I would say you asked, the other part of your question, what has been the challenge? And since this is a discussion around, the feminization of dentistry and that kind of bent, I think the challenge or the hardship is always balancing your life as well as your profession. I think as women, we are in a unique role where, we're still, the keepers of the home to a big extent. We still, at least I still have traditional roles. we have 4 children. So, while I was in school, after I finished school, we started a family, and then, kids take up a lot of time. And I wear that hat, the mom hat, with a lot of pride and a lot of accomplishment. But it earlier on, when my kids were little, it certainly, I don't want to say slowed me down, but I wasn't able to kind of invest as quickly in my profession and achieve the things that I currently have achieved because of that. But that I wouldn't have it any other way, because that, I feel like I have the best of both worlds. I have a beautiful family as well as an amazing career, which just keeps me going. So I think in that sense, maybe juggling a little bit of everything, is what has been a challenge. But the beauty of our profession is that you can create your own hours. You can, take time off to go to the school play. And so I never really felt that my kids were lacking. And so to me, just striking a balance between work and home has always been a bit of an issue or a bit of a challenge, but it's working itself out really well for me.
And we will go back to the work-life balance a little bit later in the interview, but I want to ask you, based on your experience, do you think the same challenges are facing women today, or are there other new challenges, or is it still the same game?
Well, I haven't really experienced personally any sort of gender bias. I think maybe not as much as my predecessors, perhaps a generation before me. Certainly I see a lot more women in there. I guess there are a lot of fewer role models or mentors when I was going through graduate school and in my training. That's definitely changing. So I think if you're looking for a mentor, you're looking for someone, to kind of emulate or to work similar to. I didn't really have that when I was going through schooling and during my education. But really, I think we're very fortunate to live in a country like Canada. I think we Canadians are very accepting and very open to gender, sexual preferences, anything. It kind of all goes. So I can't say that I've had really obstacles. I think really what's, the only thing that if it slowed me down at all in my career was just my personal fulfillment of growing and having a family and having that side of my life develop as well.
So you did mention that you went into specialty without really any difficulties. You were actually more encouraged. Are there now more women prosthodontists, or is it still the same? Are women facing not so much gender bias challenges, but maybe it's a work-life balance challenge not to go into a specialty? What are your thoughts around that?
I think that, it's not to say that I should backtrack a little bit and say that it's still a very male-dominated field. So if you go to any, symposium or CE or any conference, it's still heavily male-dominated in the attendance as well as on the podium. So there's definitely, I have felt at times, and I do continue to feel sometimes there is a little bit of that boys club. And that's just the way it is. But, if what I do is try to be the best that I could be. I don't expect any preferential treatment because I'm a woman. I want to, achieve my accomplishments. And if it is speaking on a large podium because of my merit, not because of my gender, but there is still very much in some instances, sort of an all boys club type of scenario. And so I think that, in terms of younger women that are graduating, if we look at the shift in the demographic in terms of the dental classes, I think you have the statistics on, the male-female split. When I was in dental school, our class was about a third female. Now I think it's more like 50%, if not more. So there are a lot more female specialists out there as well. So, my classmate at the time was a woman. And then our current grad prosto class is majority female. So I'm really proud of all of the residents, but, I really think that being in, working in Canada, we really have really great opportunities. And I'd like to think, there are other female prosthodontists that are on staff at our university and across Canada, that there are a lot more examples of what you can achieve, in a specialty. And I think the barriers are broken down. And with that, as we progress, we will see more females on the podium. We will see more women in dental conferences, because the tides are changing. Things are shifting a little bit. We see a lot more women in organized dentistry and in leadership positions. So I think that's amazing, and I encourage that. And I'm always looking to mentor my students and my younger colleagues. So it's something that I'm giving back that I really didn't have, that that I'd like to give back.
You segued very well into my next question, which is about your role as a mentor. Do you see yourself as a mentor? Do you see yourself as a role model? How do you coach the new generation?
I mean, do I see myself as a mentor? I'd like to think that I am. Certainly love teaching, and I have younger female residents that have said to me that I'm their mentor, so I guess perhaps I am. And I take that with a lot of pride, and I'm very humbled by that. I just think that if you can show your younger, the younger generation what heights you can reach and what you can achieve, really the sky's the limit. That's what I tell my daughter. I mean, she's 16, and she's going to be the best that she can be. And I tell her that there is no difference between her and her brothers. I mean, it's not even a discussion, because there are no differences as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I take my role as a mentor seriously. I'm glad that I'm perceived that way. And I try to open opportunities, as much as I can.
So now we're going to talk about a really interesting initiative that you started, and it is called Women in Dentistry Work-Life Balance. Mm-hmm. What is it, and was it important for you to start it?
Yeah, so I mean, ever since I graduated, basically, I thought, again, because there was this void, it was a bit intimidating when I go to conferences or seminars, and really, everyone was kind of middle-aged white men. And so that's shifting a little bit, but that's still kind of present. So I found that often it was that I may have at certain points felt intimidated, kind of raising my voice or asking questions or engaging in conversation. And so about 8 years ago, we founded Women in Dentistry Study Club, basically, which is essentially, it's evolved into this great organization where it started off just kind of reaching out to my female referrals, to people that I work with, and just kind of saying, hey, why don't we get together? Why don't we have, the scientific session? So it's always, education based. These are our meetings. And it's just a great way to learn, of course, because that's ultimately why we're in the profession, and a great way to network. And I think the intimidation factor is, I'd like to think, non-existent, because younger grads, for example, that come in, it's a lot less intimidating to be surrounded by like-minded or similar individuals, people that women that have the same kind of challenges that perhaps men don't. So again, balancing kids, do you even have kids, or all of those things that men generally typically don't have to face. That's kind of where that idea, that initiative started, and it's been about 8 years since it's been formally established, and we've developed an annual symposium that's I believe this year it's on May 15th, and it pretty much I typically have 4 speakers, female speakers usually, other specialists that we get together, have informative, half-hour talks from each speakers, and it's a really great way to network with one another. So I'm really proud of that. It's my passion project, and I hope to see it continue to expand and to flourish, because there's a lot of interest, and industry is even catching on. Like, people want to support anything to do with that, because I guess they see that the graduating class is primarily female or predominantly female. So I think it kind of is, it's all coming sort of full circle.
And I'm sure it's a great contribution to the field of prosthodontics, but also to the profession of dentistry in general. I will have all that information included in the post for anybody who's interested. Is the symposium open to everyone, or is it female only, or?
Yeah, so it's absolutely, I mean, generally female only, but I mean, we're not going to exclude, so any men that want to come are welcome. But yeah, it's open. We send out we advertise, and it's just a really nice, it's a really great evening. Very, we have dinner and drinks and education and friendship and camaraderie and professionalism, and what more can you ask for? So it's really something that I'm proud of, that I work with a wonderful team, our staff here, that really allow me to do what I can do, because without staff, without people behind you, there isn't any way that we can achieve what we want to achieve. And I think that's really a take-home message, to surround yourself with wonderful people, wonderful staff, wonderful friends, have that support all around, and you can kind of achieve anything. So I really am thankful to be surrounded by amazing staff and colleagues that make this happen.
And rightly so. I really am going to make a statement, but I know that it is sometimes controversial. Based on what you're describing, this is a symposium that is technically educational. You come together, you learn something new, you bring in speakers, specialist speakers who, enrich the conversation. But on many occasions, what I've seen is that, symposia after symposia, conference after conference, where women get together, it's all about, yoga and, other things that are female oriented. And it's probably one lecture that is dealing with dentistry or oral health or anything like that. I'm really happy that your symposium is a little bit different, because women are serious professionals. I'm not saying that yoga is not as important, but it is a clinical symposium. It is a professional symposium, and unfortunately, sometimes things get mixed just because of the gender. And I don't know if that's adding to the problem, or if that's the problem, or I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, I think I'm going to answer that or comment in two parts. So first of all, there has been some, when I first started off, there was some, I don't want to call it backlash, but I definitely got the comments from, male colleagues that, some that I can't even repeat online because they were just really rude and inappropriate. And I just take comments like that and I just say, I just roll it off my back. That's ignorance as far as I'm concerned, in terms of, people making comments about, well, why do you need a women's society? Like, if you don't get it, then that's fine. And as I said, it's a way for us to network, again, keeping it very scientific and keeping it very professional. But, similarities amongst females, you can't, there is a male and female difference, bottom line. And so that's what this speaks to. In terms of, I'm very mindful of, if I'm going to do a symposium, if I'm going to have something for women in dentistry, to keep it clinical. I'm not interested in manicures at the symposium. That's not me. I think there's a time and place for everything. And if we're going to do something professional, let's just keep it that way. And that doesn't mean that we can't bring any other topics that relate to health and medicine. We have this year, hopefully we're going to have a nutritionist speak to the dentist. So there's always something clinical. We're going to have someone talk about mindfulness as well, because that's something that's really kind of poo-pooed and ignored, that I think is really important to kind of bring to awareness, because so many patients kind of need a little bit of extra TLC. So there are different tangents that we go on, but they're always professional. They're always clinical. There's not a lot of fluff, if you will. And so that's how I roll. That's how I kind of, I keep my professional life professional. And then, there's a time and place for the other great stuff. But if I'm going to be in charge, it's going to stay pretty clinical.
And I like that, because it speaks to the professionalism.
That's what it is.
So looking ahead, if you had a crystal ball, how would you see women's contribution to dentistry in, let's say, the next 15, 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable that it is going to happen. I'd like to see more women in leadership positions, and we do already have that, which is really, really amazing. I think that, at least in my experience in the Canadian University, at University of Toronto, we have a pretty good presence. So I'd like to just see more and more kind of develop from primarily organized dentistry. I think that's where maybe things are a little bit lacking, but just the continuation of not having any differences between male and female. And I'd like to think that there aren't anymore, really. That, as I said before, as I tell my students, as I tell my daughter, as I tell my children, the sky's the limit, and that's pretty much all you can hope for.
You're certainly not very different from my other interviewees. Everybody would like to see this gender differentiation disappear and, not be the phenomenon it is today or it was in the past. I think there will always be differences in terms of how we treat patients or because we're different in terms of our attitudes and our values and how we approach things and how we do things, but definitely not to the extent where the profession is so different between two groups. I don't think that exists, and I don't think that will exist in the future, and hopefully this conversation becomes history in 15 years from now.
I mean, I do still see there is still a glass ceiling. It is still, existent, but I think we're, at least in dentistry, I think we're kind of getting close to, shattering it completely and really having, complete kind of equality on all fronts, be it organized dentistry, research, education, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I think we have really good leaders in our universities in Toronto, at least at the University of Toronto. I think I personally have never really felt the brunt of it from the leaders. I think if I felt any kind of difficulties, it may have been with, more on the staffing issues, whatever, as attitudes were changing. But right now, I mean, things it's a good day to be a woman.
And you are a beautiful example of the sky is the limit. You're a specialist, you're an accomplished professional. I thank you very much, Dr. Habsha, for taking the time and speaking with me today. I really appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure, Shiraz, and thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're always welcome.